YouTube, welcome back to my channel and welcome to the beginning of a brand new reading vlog. I'm doing a buddy read of this one with Tiffany from Hierarchy of Reads. I started reading this in September, but at the end of September I knew I wasn't going to finish it, so I kind of put it aside and read some other books. Lolita is the kind of book that makes you question the entire time you're reading it why you're reading it. If you're not familiar with the synopsis, I'll tell you briefly. I'm at about page 40. We have a main character named Humbert, who's an admitted pedophile, and he's in a courtroom situation justifying his thoughts and behaviors by comparing what he has done with other artists and men of history who have been excused because of their historical significance. And he's describing very sick behavior, but there's some clues in here that make me think that Humbert is really suffering from delusions of grandeur, and that Nabokov is using his arguments to really satirize and examine our patriarchal society. So I'm really intrigued to continue. This is Banned Books Week, which I didn't realize, and this definitely is a book that has been banned in many societies, including ours, and I can see why. This is not a book for the faint of heart, but I have a strong heart, so I'm going to continue. I'm at page 77. And it's tough. Lolita is supposed to be nymphet. This is the way this adult man describes. Sorry, I'm wearing my retainers, so I talk a little different. Lolita is the embodiment of a pedophile admiring a young child and justifying his thoughts because there are some girls who are just ready for love when they are 12 years old. So he meets this woman and goes to live in this woman's house because she has a daughter, and he's in love with her. And the girl's name, of course, is Lolita. So it's very difficult to read this man giving these very sexual descriptions of a small girl. And so I think I need some sugar. So I'm gonna go to Pinkberry because some books like bitter pills need a little bit of sugar to help you swallow them. Main character, I call him HH. He's not a regular pedophile. He's not a rapist in his view. He only deals with nymphets. Those are the girls who they've matured. They are ready for a relationship with an older man. So in his view, they're appealing and attractive. They're womanly enough to be appealing to a man, even though they're not chronologically old enough yet for society to recognize them in general. Because what he says is that society, in trying to make these broad categories, are forced to delay acceptance because you want to make sure that everyone is old enough. I really want to be finished with this book soon because it is a psychological read, and I know that Nabokov is manipulating me. He's telling me only as much of the story as he wants me to know. He's done a lot of toying with me. Not just me, I mean, he's done a lot of toying with the reader up to this point. I'm about halfway in. The book goes up to 287. This is not where I am. This is where I am. I'm at page 190 something and it goes up to 287. So the author is very clever in using these psychological terms for his defense. He uses very clever wordplay to appeal to your literary side, and you get to a place where you're anticipating the character's actions even though you know how depraved they are. So this is a book, like I said, I really want to finish reading because it makes for a very interesting, even if appalling read. I'm also a little scared about the influence that this author is maybe having on me, and so I don't want to give him too much more of my time. I want to finish with this book today. I was reading as I was on the bus. I'm really trying to finish Lolita today, and I was just having this thought. So the book includes a lot of French phrases, and you know how I told you that it's a psychological exercise, that Nabokov is manipulating the reader in a psychological way. He's using these terms that are supposed to get a rise out of you, or at least that's my thought. And the fact that he has included these French phrases when he's not French, Nabokov is Russian, the book is written for English speakers. Why are these French phrases included? You know, when someone curses and they say, "Pardon my French," even though the curse word is not French. And I wonder, what is the point? I don't know the answer yet, but That's just me thinking while I'm reading this. So I'll talk to you later. Maybe at my next check-in I will be done because I need to finish this today. There was a lot that I saw in this book to appreciate, and there's a lot that it evoked in me. But at the end, I can't put into words how I feel about it. I can't put into words how I feel about the writing. I know what I think, but I don't know how I feel. Like, there were points in this book where I felt dirty. H.H. is describing a sexual reaction to young girls. I don't know how comfortable I am talking about this book. That is the problem. There's a lot of literary devices in this book. There's a lot to appreciate about this writing. There's a lot of cleverness that the author accomplishes. I really like the literary journey, the literary adventure that the author took us on. I didn't understand all of the references. There's a section where they're going on a trip. They take this road trip around the country as they are trying to escape the bonds, people who would probably know the inappropriateness of their relationship and maybe judge them for it. And I think there's something significant about the places that they visit and the things that they do. I didn't get all of those references, but the ones that I did understand, I really liked. I also like the way Nabokov is complex in his portrayal of Lolita. Her real name is Dolores, and what Lolita means and what it represents to her, to H.H., and to the reader. And there were points where I wondered what the ideal reader for this book would look like. I really like the letter that Nabokov wrote to his readers at the end. Teachers of literature are apt to think of such problems as, what is the author's purpose? Or still worse, what is the guy trying to say? Now, I happen to be the kind of author who, in starting to work on a book, has no other purpose than to get rid of that book, and who, when asked to explain its origin and growth, has to rely on such ancient terms as interreaction of inspiration and combination, which I admit sounds like a conjurer explaining one trick by performing another. And that's how I felt through reading a lot of this book. Like, I kept wondering, what is his purpose? What is he trying to do? What is he trying to achieve? What is he trying to get me to think about? What is he saying about psychology and people who subscribe to the psychological schools of thought, about the Oedipal complex and the Electra complex, and the complex relationship that Dolores and her mother had before the mother pretty much left Lolita in H.H.'s hands. And it made me think about the Electra complex, and I wondered if Dolores had any hand in her mother's undoing. I like the fact that the hunter becomes the hunted in this. I like the chess move, the chess game, where you think that you're being victorious, you think that you're winning, you think that you have your opponent right where you want them. Like, you are this brilliant chess player and you know in advance what your opponent is going to do and how you're going to best him. And so when he steals your queen, when he steals your queen in a surprise ambush, you're never ready for it. And so I think that this is a 4-star read for me. I would want to give it a 5-star because I think the book is brilliant. There's no way I could give this book a 5-star based on how I felt. And I didn't like the ending. I didn't like the ending. That's it. I didn't like how the book ended. Maybe I'll write down an alternate version for the last 10 pages or so in this book and float it to you guys and see how you would feel about whether you've read Lolita and whether you think that my ending might be a little bit better of a resolution for these characters. And so this is the first book that I finished, and so I'm ready, so ready for another book. Like, there was a time the last couple of days when I said, I need to finish this book today. I can't read anymore. I can't have this book in my thoughts, in my consciousness any longer. It still took me another day to finish it. But yeah, now that it's over, ready for something a little lighter, a little more okay for me. I'm reading The Lost Art of Reading, and I think in choosing this book, I focused on the title and not the subtitle. Books and Resistance in a Troubled Time is very political. The author frames the act of reading and the importance of reading in the political applications, what reading brings to our lives, and what kind of political changes have occurred in our society that make us not want to read and make us not readers as we used to be. He defines a reader as a person who frames the world through books. Then he speaks about authors and indeed writers of every ilk as well as readers, and champions the cause of books through not just the pleasure of reading it, but about the political changes. Because even though he's talking about books and talking about reading and talking about wanting to pass on the love of reading to his son and not being able to because of what the society is like now, he talks about the fact that even him as an adult, he struggles with being distracted by all the different things that are pulling his attention away from just the ability that books have for him to be immersed in them. While he talks about all of that, it's not a book so much about the art of reading, but in the resistance that books provide. So he talks about the Obama legacy as being one of intellectual discourse and to a certain extent the rejection of social media, because even though Barack Obama announced his presidency on social media and indeed used social media to harness support, I suppose some of what the author is now speaking about would be the fact that the current administration is so much the opposite direction. He speaks about the Germans and the Nazi Revolution, where we took away people's wanting to think for themselves and made them reactionaries instead of thinkers. If you're not a fan of this author's politics, you might not be able to really enjoy what he's saying about books. It's a pretty short read. It's only 150 pages, non-fiction. I should be able to finish this later today, even though I started several days ago. I finished reading The Lost Art of Reading, Books and Resistance in a Troubled Time. I'm going to read you one of my favorite passages. It's on page 79. It says, "It's not possible to read a book in the present, for books exist in many moments all at once. There is the immediate experience of reading, but also the chronology of the narrative, as well as of the characters and author, all of whom bear their own relationship to time. There is the fixity of the text, which doesn't change whether it was written yesterday or 1,000 years ago. Perhaps most important, there is the way reading requires us to pay attention, which cannot help but return us to the realm of inner life." So for this book, I think the subtitle is more significant than the title itself. This is a book about books and the resistance to distraction, which if you're not careful, you might miss his theme. My other favorite passage from this book, it is a paraphrase of Thomas Paine's writing, and it appears on page 148, and it says, "Reading, after all, is an act of resistance in a landscape of distraction, a matter of engagement in a society that seems to want nothing more than for us to disengage. We regain the world by withdrawing from it just a little, by stepping back from the noise, the tumult, to discover our reflections in another mind. As we do, we join a broader conversation by which we both transcend ourselves and are enlarged." And that for me is what this book is about. The act of reading as resistance to what culture kind of demands for you to respond to everything and to not take time out to be silent and to engage in solitary activity, but to be plugged into all the various media at all points and to be instantly accessible to the world. And I liked that as a theme, but I didn't like everything else that this book did. And it wasn't my favorite thing to read on the subject of reading. I've read other things that have impacted me a little more profoundly, I think. And so now I'm gonna move on to another book, I think. The Lost Art of Reading. I spent 150 pages reading about another man's reading, and now I think it's time for me to return to my own reading. Not just paraphrases or quotes of other famous writers on the subject of writing or reading, or a listing of this reader's accomplishments. I think it's time for me to add to my own accomplishments. So on to book 3. One of the books that I got from NetGalley to review is The Water Cure by Sophie McIntosh. The Man Booker Prize is going on right now, and The Water Cure didn't make the short list. But I still have plans, even though the shortlist has already been announced. I still have plans to read the entire long list. So it'll be good to read this one. I like to be able to weigh in on the choices, what the judges read and what they rejected at the time when the winner is announced. That announcement happens in the middle of October, so it's a great time to read The Water Cure and be able to talk about that as one of the books that I've read from the Man Booker long list. So on to reading The Water Cure. And this pretty short novel is about three sisters living on some remote island along with their mother and their father, whose name is King. The mother doesn't have a name other than Mother. They're living in some kind of dystopic society where something has happened on the mainland and this family has escaped, so they're living on an island which is only accessible to the rest of the place by boat, and they seem to have some cure for whatever it is that is troubling women. And so from time to time, women who've been exposed to toxins and who are having issues, they find this family on this remote island and they come for this cure. There are references to water and to salt. And there's a scene where we see the mother and the father and their first child fleeing the mainland and coming to this island in the first place. Grace, their oldest daughter, is a baby. And the author is careful to point out that they don't look back. And because there is a lot of discussion about salt, and this reminds me of the Genesis story in the Bible of Lot and his wife who are told to leave this city that's about to be destroyed. And while Lot and his family leave, the wife is very regretful, and so she looks back and becomes changed into a pillar of salt. So I'm not sure if her religious discussion is going to figure in this dystopic society, but as far as we know, women are being troubled, they're being violated in some way in this other part of the society. And King, as the man, he's the only one who's able to go back to the society and intermingle with the people who are afflicted and also those who are afflicting them. And so there are these exercises and rituals that they perform before his trip to strengthen him before he goes, but also to purify him when he returns. While the mother and the three daughters don't leave this island, they're exposed in some way to the women who come to them for curing. And so there are these other rituals that they also perform, and the way it's described seems more like torture than any kind of purification rituals. So right now I'm still in the early stages of the novel, but some of the questions that I have: is she going to tackle transgender discussion? Early in the book, it's also revealed that the oldest sister is pregnant, and it sets up the question, who is the father? We do know that she has a different kind of a relationship with her father than with her mother, and so I'm wondering if this is going to be a case of incest. I really don't want to read a book about incest, but we do know that there's interaction with unrelated males coming. So I don't know what the chronology of the book is yet, because it's told in these alternating perspectives. We read from one or the other daughter, and then there are also sections where all three daughters unite to write a scene. And a lot of it seems to be letters, like they're writing to their father. What's really interesting about the book is that while we keep hearing about what men do to women, the girls are not exposed to men for most part until the boys or the men invade their island. They have no exposure to men other than their father, and yet they still have to go through these very torturous exercises and rituals, and it seems like most of the suffering that they experience is at the hands of their mother, not their father. So how much of what they suffer is really necessary, and how much of it is just a reaction to fear? At the end of part one is when the three men came to their island. There are two adult men and one young boy who's sick, and while part one had this alternating perspective where we read from one or the other of the older girls, and then there were sections where the three girls were united and speaking together as they were kind of addressing their letters or addressing their journals to their father who's disappeared, and we're told that he's dead, but I don't know if we've seen a body. In any case, in part two, the three men are now on the island, and the middle daughter, Leah, falls for one of them, and she's the one who lets them into the house. But then all the rules seem to change. The mother changes and she allows the men to come in, saying that she's afraid of them. And the tone is a distinct departure from part one. We're reading now exclusively from Leah's perspective. She's the one who's having this relationship with this foreign man, and we're seeing them
seeing their mother's words. Their mother has, it's called the welcome book, but it's really a list of rules on why to avoid men and what to do to make sure that you're never infected by them. And yet the men come and everything changes. And I guess the author set it up so that we'll see what life is like before and after the men. The rule of the mother and then the rule of the men as the mother disappears also, and the men kind of take over, and the girls are having to make decisions for themselves whether they will continue the torturous traditions that their mother had and the abusive treatments that she put them through, if they really believed that they should do those things, and whether they'll continue them when she's gone. Part 2, like I said, is written exclusively by Leah, and it's interesting because she is the one who's most swayed by these men. And so while part 1 is this rigorous demonstration against men, part 2 is seeing the effect of some kind of an alliance with them, whether you will be weakened, whether you'll be enervated or energized by the presence of men. I'm in Central Park. I'm just walking through the park and I'm reading The Water Cure, and I like it when characters' names mean something. So the middle daughter, Leah, she's the one who falls for one of the men when they come. Her name, L-I-A, spelled backwards, is Ale. One of the men, her love interest, his name is Lou, L-L-E-W. Backwards, his name spells well. Leah's the one who falls sick with love, and so it sets up this premise that as she declines, Lou is increasing. I'm in the home stretch. I'm about 75% of the way through the book right now, and so I should be finished pretty soon, maybe even before my walk is over. So I'm finished with The Water Cure and I'm giving it a 3-star rating. There's a lot that I liked about the book. I like the idea of the mother and father taking their 3 daughters away from mainstream society and giving them an opportunity to grow up in this more cloistered environment, giving them an appreciation for family and the bonds of sisterhood. However, the mother and father, their intentions are far from being good. And so I liked that the daughters also discover the truth behind their mother and father's humanity without having them perpetually on some kind of pedestal. So I like the concept of the story. However, I think that most of the faults that I found with the book was in the execution. Quite a few of the subplots didn't feel like they really matched with the rest of the story. I like the fact that men and women of various ages appear throughout the storyline, and the balance of power shifted depending on whether the men or women were older or younger than their counterparts. So there's a lot that I liked about the book. I'm still not sure that I think it is Man Booker quality. So I'm glad that I read it, but for me this is not a very high rating, and it's not the quality that I expect from a Man Booker Prize contender. So I'm off now to book culture, and now that I'm finished with this book, I have another book in mind that I want to read next. And if you stick around for the bonus content, then maybe I'll tell you what book I buy here, which would clue you in about my next video. Or maybe I'll just show you a book haul. But stick around for the bonus content if you want to see more about my little life. So that's it for this first reading vlog in October. I've already started reading more books, so I can almost guarantee that there are going to be more reading vlogs during this month. So if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel so you won't miss the next installment. And if you like this video, give me a thumbs up, and let's talk in the comments about which of these 3 books maybe you've read or want to read now, because I've talked about them. So thanks for watching. We'll talk in the comments, and until next time, happy reading. Bye.
$3.02 is your change.
Among other things, I just picked up some Black Panther comics, and I don't know anything about the story. I might be the only person in America who hasn't watched the movie, but I do know that Ta-Nehisi Coates writes these, and I like his writing, and they were on sale, so I bought a few of these. Thanks for watching this video. Thanks for sticking around for the bonus content, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.